Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to High Volume Video. I'm Keith, and if you didn't notice, I'm in a little bit of a different setup today. I'm in my chiller chair here. It's a little bit squeaky. Hopefully it doesn't mess with the audio too much. But I decided to move a shelf, if you can't see behind me. We had this shelf just sitting in our laundry room, kind of not really being used, and I decided to move it out here to kind of display some of my VHS tapes, and also I set up a second CRT. But yeah, I think this looks pretty cool. I got my Friday the 13th tapes up at the top there, displayed nicely. But yeah, I don't know if I'm gonna keep it like this, but for this video, we're gonna keep it. But this video is not going to be about CRT TVs and VHS tapes. This video is going to be about the Criterion collection. Let's get into it. So before I get started, I just wanted to quick shout out a couple of channels that have been making similar content to this that kind of helped inspire me to make this video, and hopefully future videos that are, go with the same format of just kind of going over some movies that I've watched recently. And first being Bearded Film Guy. He recently started a vlog series where he just goes over, movies that he's watched recently. Very chill, very cool. His channel is awesome. His podcast, Beyond the Blood, is awesome. Check him out if you don't already watch and know about him. And then another one is Nathan Jones. He does a series on his channel. I believe it's called Film Journey, My Film Journey, something like that. But I really like that format of just kind of talking openly about, stuff that you watched recently. A lot of people on YouTube do like monthly recaps, so this is going to be kind of like a shortened version of that. I'm hoping to try to do one of these a week. So yeah, with all that said, let's get into the first movie. So the first one I have here is Good Morning. I watched this a few days ago, and this is from 1959, and it's by director Yasuhiro Ozu, who I think is a pretty well-known director, at least in the, Criterion collector community. He gets talked about quite a bit in videos that I see. But this is my first of his films that I've seen, and I really liked it. I think if you take it, just at surface face value, it felt kind of just like a lighthearted, sitcom, almost like a movie version of a sitcom, but obviously taking place in 1959 Japan. Comedy is going to be a little different than today's comedy, but there's still I was chuckling throughout the movie. But yeah, below the surface though, that's just face value. Below the surface, there's definitely some themes. What I took away from the movie was it's mostly about the way we communicate with each other. The main story is it's about these two brothers, these two young boys, who they want a TV. Their family doesn't have a TV. I guess 1959 TVs weren't as prevalent as they are today, obviously. But these two boys, they're supposed to be studying, I believe, but instead of studying, they're going to their friend's house and watching sumo wrestling or whatever it is. And they ask their parents for a TV so that they can watch at home, and that request is swiftly denied. And the boys decide to protest by not speaking. I think the father is like scolding them, and asks them not to speak or something, and they push it to the extreme of not talk, or saying they're not going to talk, and it lasts a couple days. But so beyond that though, that's very funny. Obviously, it's a very silly concept for a movie. But beyond that, there's a lot of characters in this movie actually. There's all these subplots where you're dealing with the fathers, they're going to work, and then the mothers, and just ladies who live in this suburb of, I think it's Tokyo. They're very gossipy, and yeah, one of the main plots is the mother of the two boys is supposed to collect this money for some sort of dues. I don't know if it's like homeowners, whatever, something like that. But she's supposed to collect these dues and hand them off to another lady in town, and she does, but the money goes missing somehow, and I don't want to spoil it because it's pretty funny, like what ends up happening. But the other ladies in town are kind of gossiping about maybe who took the money, and one of the other ladies who is supposed to have the money purchased I think it's like a washer and dryer or something, which, you know, in 1959 was probably a big purchase. But so the ladies are gossiping about, oh, maybe she took the money and bought the washer and dryer with that. And then also I was kind of thinking maybe that was part of the reason why the parents didn't want to buy the TV. They didn't want the neighbors gossiping about them, saying, oh, did this lady just pocket the money and buy the TV with that money? But yeah, so there's that. And then there's also another kind of subplot with the two boys' aunt, and one, I believe he's like a tutor of theirs, helping teach them, I think it's English, I don't remember, it's a tutor of theirs, but he has kind of like a romantic thing with their aunt, and they have some very deep conversations, and their father ends up having, there's a really cool scene, or a deep scene, I don't say it's really cool, but there's a deep scene where their father is having a conversation with one of the neighbors who I think is like forced into early retirement or something, and he's depressed about it, and then he ends up getting another job. Anyways, I'm getting too far into the weeds here, but anyways, this was a really silly, lighthearted, like I said, yeah, it feels just like a situational comedy, but very subdued, and it's a cool look at, you know, what life was like in 1959 Japan, I think. The back even says it's gently satirizing consumerism as well, and yeah, I guess I wasn't really catching on to that during my first viewing of this, but that I can see that making sense with, you know, the TV and the washing machine little subplot there. But that's Good Morning. I would suggest, if you're into Japanese chill situational comedy movies like that, I would say check this one out. I think I gave this like 4.5 stars. I really like this one, so that's Good Morning. Okay, the next one I have here is One False Move. This is like a crime thriller, cop drama type movie. It's from 1992, and it's directed by Carl Franklin, a filmmaker that I'm not too familiar with. I think this is the only movie I've seen from him. But it stars Bill Paxton, Billy Bob Thornton, Michael Beach, and Cinda Williams. Obviously, you know, Bill Paxton and Billy Bob are great in this. Michael Beach and Cinda Williams I wasn't as familiar with, but they both do a pretty good job in this movie, I think. But yeah, it wasn't... I had higher hopes for this movie, considering the kind of movie it is. It's about these... So Billy Bob and Michael Beach and Cinda Williams are these criminals who, in the beginning of the movie, they rob a drug dealer, and they're kind of on the run. They get identified because they end up leaving a child alive who was in the home of the drug dealer. So they're on the run from Los Angeles to Arkansas, and come to find out later in the movie, Cinda Williams' character is from this town that they end up getting stuck in, but they're kind of just this trio of pretty ruthless criminals. The way they kill people throughout the movie is pretty brutal. Billy Bob is just a dick, and you know, Billy Bob's good at playing that kind of character. Michael Beach also is pretty sinister in this movie. He's very cold. Cinda Williams just feels like she maybe is caught up hanging out with the wrong people, I guess. But the standout for this movie for me was Bill Paxton. His character, he plays like a small town sheriff from the town that Cinda Williams' character is from as well. And he kind of plays this like happy-go-lucky, very gung-ho, like small town, very ambitious. I think he's a sheriff, or might be a police officer. I don't know, but he's very gung-ho about his job, and he gets real excited when he finds out that these that these criminals are in his town or somewhere in the near vicinity, and these other two officers from Los Angeles are hot on their trail, and Bill Paxton's character is just he's very eager to help out. He's almost like a little kid, kind of. He gets very excited about the idea of taking on this big case. I mean, you get the idea that in this small town, not a lot is happening, so he's pretty excited about this. But he has some very I don't want to say touching moments, but he has some really good scenes where he definitely shows his acting chops. He can switch like that, from going from being this happy-go-lucky, very eager officer to there's a particular scene in this diner where he overhears the other two police officers kind of making fun of him, and the look he gives is just, it's kind of haunting. You get the sense that there's a lot more to his character, and he does a really good job portraying that. And then towards the end of the movie too, I'm not going to spoil the twist because I feel like this movie doesn't really get talked about at all on YouTube. But the twist towards the end, you get to see more of his character, more of him is revealed, and he does a really good job. And Cinda Williams does a good job as well. And yeah, the whole cast is pretty good in this. Overall, though, I wasn't that hot on the movie. I think I just had higher expectations. I really like cop crime drama, stuff like that, and it felt like this movie was trying to be a little bit more important and say a little bit more than I think it succeeded at doing. But yeah, overall, good, not great. That's one false move. Alright, and the last one I brought to talk about is actually a trilogy, and that's Richard Linklater's Before Trilogy. I'm a big Richard Linklater fan. Obviously, everybody knows Dazed and Confused, and I'm a big fan of Boyhood and Slacker, and this trilogy, I think if you watch in a row like I did, I watched them all back to back over this past weekend. It feels kind of reminiscent of Boyhood if you're familiar with that movie. Richard Linklater definitely seems to have some sort of like obsession with time and incorporating that as like a major theme of his movies. Very unique structure. I don't want to totally spoil these movies for anybody who hasn't seen them, and also Matt and I will be talking about this entire trilogy on the next episode of Return to Videotech, so I'm going to save the deeper conversation about this movie for that. But just surface level, if you haven't seen these, basically Before Sunrise, the first installment, takes place in 1995, and it follows Ethan Hawke's character Jesse and Julie Delpy's character Celine. They meet on a train in, I believe it's Paris, but France, somewhere in Europe. Jesse talks Celine into spending the day with him, walking around Paris and having these deep philosophical conversations. It's a very idyllic, romantic movie. I really think it's awesome. Basically, the whole movie is just dialogue. They're just walking around having these conversations, very deep conversations, and both actors give a very, very good performances. Especially there's these really long like one takes where I don't know how they remembered all their lines, or I'm sure some of it was probably improvised, but it's very believable. They give very believable performances, and the first one definitely feels like the most hopeful, because the next one, Before Sunset, you fast forward 9 years, and that's in real time too. Like the first one came out in 95, this one comes out in 2004, Before Sunset. Basically they reconnect. You find out that I don't want to totally spoil it, but they reconnect after having missed a missed opportunity, I'll say. And yeah, so they reconnect, and it's the same formula. It's them walking through Paris, I believe it is, and just having more deep philosophical conversations and catching up, I guess. And obviously they have this very deep connection. Jesse and Celine, you could tell they obviously love each other, and Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy give great performances, like I said again. But for me, I think this one was not as good as the first one, just because I think I have a little bit of an issue with Jesse's character so easily being pulled towards Celine and away from. You find out that he's married and he has a kid, and I feel like it's just a little bit too easy for him to go back to Celine. And I guess if you're looking at it in a more positive light, you could say, oh, they were meant to be together. He mentions that he's not happy in his relationship, but for me at least, it still felt like it made it a little bit harder for me to like root for them, I guess, knowing that. But I will say the ending of the second one, Before Sunset, is absolutely perfect. And yeah, I'm not a huge romance guy at all, but these movies are great. And real quick, just the last one, Before Midnight, skips ahead another 9 years, and it kind of dives a little bit deeper into what kind of some of the conversations they had in the previous two movies about like what it would be like if they actually ended up together, and how, you know, kind of the spark kind of fades a little bit. I think anybody who's been in a long-term relationship can that's gonna resonate with you, I think. But yeah, they have some fights. It feels very real, and again, in the third one, yeah, they give great performances, very believable as a couple. Some of the conversations might feel a little bit forced, but overall, these movies are awesome. Like I said, I'm not a massive romance guy, but I really do love these movies. And yeah, I think if you're a Linklater fan, you should definitely check them out. Or if you're just, you know, a fan of romance movies, these are pretty good. Alright, that's going to do it for episode 1 of the Criterion Chronicles. Here again are the titles that I watched: The Before Trilogy, Good Morning, and One False Move. I enjoyed all these movies. Definitely would say Before Trilogy is the highest recommend from me. Then Good Morning if you're into, you know, situational comedy, or Japanese family drama type stuff. I thought that one was pretty funny. I really liked Good Morning. One False Move, I was more lukewarm on. Maybe on another watch I'll like it more. I would say maybe give this one a watch before buying it though, unless you're like a massive fan of crime, thriller, cop dramas, or massive fan of Bill Paxton and Billy Bob Thornton. But yeah, overall, I had a fun time watching all these. Let me know down in the comments if you've seen these, what you think of them, and if you have any recommendations for me in the Criterion collection. And yeah, that's gonna do it, guys. Thanks for watching the video. I'll be back again with another episode soon. Peace.